Hello, everyone. I'm Faith, and this is the Vita English Podcast. Welcome to the Vita English Podcast. You're listening to Language Stories. Language Stories is a series where listeners learn specific English skills through simple personal stories. In each episode, I'll focus on a different part of language as I tell my story. This podcast is for people who have a basic understanding of English, but want to improve their fluency. Today, we're going to learn all about how to use simple past tense as I tell you the story of my first teaching job. Do you remember your first real job? The job that began your career? I remember my first real job very clearly, and today I want to tell you all about it. After I graduated from university, I decided that I wanted to become an English language teacher. But in order to do that, I needed to get certified. So I left my home on the east coast of Canada, and I moved to Toronto to get my English language teaching certification. After I earned my certificate, it was time to start job hunting. I bet you know what that's like. Applications, CVs, cover letters, references, interviews, and then waiting. You know when you're waiting to hear back about a job and it seems like every day is a year? That is exactly how I felt. So, I was absolutely thrilled when shortly after an interview, I got a call back and I was offered a teaching position at an international language school. I took the job and my career as an English language teacher began. Teaching at an international school was an amazing experience. Even though I was still living in my home country, every day when I went to work, I felt like I was traveling the world. I met people from South Korea, Japan, Brazil, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, the Czech Republic, Switzerland, and many other countries. I learned so much about different countries and different cultures during that time. Going to work was really like traveling the world. I also learned a lot about myself as a teacher. Like many new teachers, I had a lot to learn. I studied language teaching methods and English grammar every day. I planned lessons for hours every night. I ate, slept, and breathed teaching. Just like anyone who is starting a new job, some days are good and some days are bad, but every day is full of opportunities to learn. And during that time, I learned a lot. Anyway, I taught English at that international school for a while, and I really enjoyed my time there. But then I got the urge to travel across the world to teach English. So I filled out an application, I wrote a cover letter, I updated my CV, and I got my references together. And this time, after my interview, I was offered a job on the other side of the world. But that's a story for another day. In the story I just told, I used simple past tense many times. Let's look at the 3 different ways I used this verb tense. Number 1, to talk about an action that was completed once in the past. Example, I earned my certificate. So in my story of my first teaching job, I talked a bit about the certification I had to get in order to become an English language teacher. And I said, I earned my certificate and then I looked for a job. When I say I earned my certificate, I'm talking about a specific moment in the past, an action that was completed one time. I only had to earn this certificate once, and it's finished. So I use simple past tense. Number 2, to talk about actions that were completed multiple times in the past. Example, I planned lessons for hours every night. So when I first became a teacher, it took a lot of time to plan lessons. I planned lessons for hours every night. This was a repeated action. It wasn't just a one-time thing. But during that time in my life, when I was a new teacher, I planned lessons every night. So it happened multiple times, many times, but it's something that is in the past, but it didn't just happen once. It happened many times. And when we talk about an action that was completed multiple times in the past, we also use simple past tense. Number 3, to talk about things that were true for a time in the past, but are not true now. Example, I taught at that international school for a while. I worked at that international school for about a year. So it wasn't just something that happened at a moment in the past. It was a time period, but it's completed now. I no longer work at that school. When we are talking about a time period in the past, something that was true for an extended amount of time in the past, we also use simple past tense. All right, now it's your turn. I want to give you a chance to practice using simple past tense. Try to answer these 3 questions. Say your answers out loud. Remember to use simple past tense. Question number 1. When did you start your first job? Question number 2. What is something that you did every day when you were young? Question number 3. What is an activity you did every day when you were younger, but you no longer do now? Thanks for tuning in to the Vita English podcast. Tune in to the next episode of Language Stories to learn simple future tense.